Hi everyone, I am John Ferrell and thank you so much for joining me today. Before we jump in, I wanted to say a big thank you to the team at PHDwin for inviting us to be a part of PHDwin Week. We're excited to be here and walk you through some of the practical workflows that will help you get more value and a lot of more speed out of your production data. In this session, I'm really going to show you how to go from identifying the wells you're looking for in WellDatabase and exporting that clean, structured data to PHDwin. And then whether you're building a brand new project, evaluating an M&A deal, updating an existing one, we've got you covered on just about all bases. So let's jump right into that. So to get started, let's hit the basics. How are you going to find the wells you need in WellDatabase? So for those of you who aren't familiar with WellDatabase, what we're looking at here is our well browser where you got your map on your left, your analytics on your right. We can toggle a well list and that's where our exports will happen. But for this section, we're talking about our filters. So you can see here, I'm looking at my applied filters. If I flip over to all, you'll see there's a bajillion ways to find the data you're looking for. We won't touch on every one of those, but I'm going to hit on a couple of the most common ones. And my favorite way is to use a shapefile. So under area of interest, you'll see map bounds is a default setting. That means whatever you view on your map is automatically a filter to your analytics and your well list. But this is where if I click on the edit button and go to custom, I'll have an option to draw on the map, which is super helpful if you just want to draw a polygon or a rectangle. Or I can come and import from a file. I just so happen to have this sample file here that I will open up. Now what this does, shape files are combinations of multiple shapes in a lot of cases. And one quick note to make, when you have a shapefile, it's not just a single file. Yes, there is a file with a .shp extension there, but with that file is a projection file, the database file, and so sometimes it can vary between 3 and 5 files. For WellDatabase, you need to zip those up, and that's how our system will read it. So zip those files up like I just did there, but then when I come into the screen, I will be able to select the shapes that I want to use, because you might not want every one of them, but for this purpose, I'm going to go ahead and just click them all, and then I'll just hit confirm, and these 12 will automatically become an AOI. You'll see right off the bat, my map is filtered. I'm zoomed into the shapefile that I uploaded, but if I just hit this nifty button right here beneath the legend, it will zoom to the extents of my well. And it's important to note that when you have an AOI, it's all the wells that have a surface or bottom hole within those AOIs. So any well that touches what your land looks like there will be a part of this search. So that's one just really easy way to find the data you need. But while we're talking about finding wells, let's go to a couple other common scenarios. So I'm going to reset my filters here, and we are going to go to what I do consider is probably the most common a list of API numbers. So I have a good list over here, just a random set of wells that I have. I'm going to copy these API numbers, and then up here, if I scroll up to the well finder, now you'll notice there's an API filter. You can just drop these APIs in this list and it'll work. The big problem with that is that if an API does not match, you don't get a lot of feedback on that. And so it can be a little bit frustrating to know which API matched and which one didn't. And so that's why we have the well finder, which opens it up to APIs and more. So you can see if I drop this down, I can search by API 10, 12, 14, a UWI if you're in the Canadian data set. Use our internal IDs, a simple ID or an infinity ID, which you'll see in your PHDwin exports. But if I just stick with API 10, I've got 87 wells here. I hit find and 87 matched. I hit add matched and apply. Now those were in Texas. I was in the Bakken, and luckily it tells me they're not in my viewport. So zoom to results, and here we are. There are my 87 wells, nice and simple. So what if your API list is not that clean? Say we've got some messiness in our APIs. Maybe we cross borders and we've got different formatting or different links of APIs. Well, that API search will help you with that as well. So over here, I've got another list of APIs I'm going to go ahead and grab. And this one is artificially just goofed up just to make a good example, but we'll use this. So in order to do that, I'm going to open my filters back up again, hit reset, go back to that well finder. And now I'm going to drop this API list in here. Again, it's a little bit of a manufactured goofy list, but still, you see you've got 14-digit, you've got 12-digit, you've got mix and match of all kinds of things. And so here's how you would handle that inside WellDatabase. So first I start with an API 10 match. I hit find the values. It tells me it matched 25 and it didn't find 48. So now we automatically have some feedback as to which wells we did find versus which ones didn't match. I can go ahead and click add match and it drops me right over to the 48 not found and asks if I want to search what's missing. And so I'll do that. Now you'll see all of my API 10 ones are gone. So let's drop down and choose API 12. It will automatically try to match the ones with 12-digit APIs, which it did, found 21 of them. So I'll add those and I'm down to 27 that more than likely are all 14-digit APIs, but I'll go and drop to, let me hit search missing and then I will drop to the 14-digit. And my 27 that are left. I add those. And so you can see with that how it makes it easy to interactively make sure you've gotten all your bases covered. So once I apply those, zoom to my results, then you'll see I've got a bunch of oil wells and I'm on the Texas-Louisiana border here, which will make a great example for some of our exports moving forward. So finding wells in WellDatabase is super easy. And one thing to note, when you drop them in on the well finder, it gives you the ability to list them all, and from here you can do things like click this to hide it, show it. If you want to clear out, remove some of those, you can. Furthermore, if you're in your well list, you can select wells, and if you select sets of wells, you can say filter and include or exclude here as well. So there's definitely some more interaction that you can do in WellDatabase to help you find the wells that you're after. The other thing to note in these filters is that there's something for everyone. So if you're looking for leases, you can do that. If you're looking under land grids, if you got section, township, range, you can do groups of sections here. Makes that very easy to do if you want to do counties, plays, basins, formations, you name it. And so honestly, if you're taking this to PHDwin, it's probably a set of wells that you want to evaluate. However, if you're looking for offsets, a lot of these filters will be super helpful. So that's in a nutshell finding your wells in WellDatabase. So we've touched that. Let's kind of hit the easy path and say, let's get these wells into PHDwin. So all I have to do in my well list is hit export. This will open our data export wizard. Now we support exports to a number of applications, but we're not going to talk about those today. We are talking about PHDwin. So I'm going to select that option, which gives you a very customized menu. Tells you can choose if you want to export the volumes at a well level or at a lease level, as well as you can group these by reservoir. So if you've got commingled production, if you've got multiple completions, WellDatabase stores production at a per month per reservoir level, and so this breaks it apart so that you can get multiple cases if you've got completions in different reservoirs. Down beneath here, you will see the reported production dates. This is an optional filter that allows you to select the date range for the production you want to export. So that's like super helpful in certain cases if you're trying to maintain a data set. And we'll look at that a little bit more. But all I need to do now is choose the level of production that I want to export. I will say in Texas and Louisiana, Texas is an oil well, you're going to be the lease level. In Louisiana, you have the LUW codes, which can mean lease or can mean well. So there's some trickiness in there. But if I just choose lease level and hit next, I can name this my ETX and hit finish. It's going to submit this to our backend system, and you'll see a notification pop up when it is ready. In addition to that, you can always go to My Exports. I'll open this in a new tab so we can look at it. And this will list all of your currently running exports and allow you to cancel them, re-download them, those kind of things. So it's a nice way to keep track of, is my export still running? Yes, it is still running. So while that finishes up, I will make one really solid point here is that you always want to export your data as close to the level at which it's reported. So in a state that does lease level production, it is ideal to export out your leases. Now that doesn't come with its own challenges, because depending on how recent new wells have come on to this lease, it might affect your ability to get an effective decline on it. These are all things that most of you already know, but again, whenever you're dealing with potential variables in frequencies reporting and the roll-ups, it's just really important to understand your data before you go and just start slapping decline curves on it. Okay, so while I was talking, we got the export notification. The download is ready. If I go look at my exports, I can download it here as well. And if I want to download this and take just a second to give you a quick overview of what that looks like, I'm going to drag this over and we can see our sections are here. We are by lease level, and you'll notice it's TX, district number, lease identification number, and then you'll also have your reservoir dictated in here. I did not select the option to group by reservoir, but I could, and I'll do that in another example here. But as you'll see, you've got your header, you've got your production data, you've got test data, you've got the wells within that lease. Basically, everything you need is here, and everything that PHDwin can load in, we include in our export. Now, it's something that we definitely work very close with the team at PHDwin, and I got to tell you, they're second to none in helping us ensure that our customers have the most complete data set available to them. So when they add new capabilities in PHDwin platform, they are always in communication with us so that we can add those data points into our export to ensure that you are always getting the most complete data set into your PHDwin projects. And I'm just have to reiterate, that's not normal in this industry. That the team at PHDwin is fantastic and definitely puts the customer first in that regard. So I'm going to take just a second to say, if that's all you wanted to see, how to get data from WellDatabase into PHDwin, then you're kind of done. I'm going to dive through a few more scenarios, don't get me wrong. But if that's all you wanted to see, then you can go ahead and take a break. Maybe take the rest of the hour off, get another coffee, something. But for those of you who want to stick around, let's go jump in and play with a few of our options and kind of see how we want to deal with that. So I want to circle back around to my initial problem that I set up with that shapefile. The shapefile is really just a great example of the type of file that you get for filters when you're doing a new M&A evaluation. And that's something that WellDatabase can really streamline for you, can make that entire process much faster, much easier. So I hate to redo this, but I'm coming through and remaking this search one more time. And when I do, I can get back to my 40 wells here. And real quick, a neat tip here. I'm going to go over onto my map tool side. And so there's lots of options in WellDatabase that you can deal with, but I can take that same shapefile and I can add it to my map in a more interactive way as well. To do so, I'm just going to go to layers and create what's called a drawing layer. Just leave the default settings for now. And then from this drawing layer, you can draw new shapes on there. You can add well-known text, or we can import file. We'll import that same shape file. And when we do, now we can click on these various segments of these various shapes and view the data in that shapefile. And when you're evaluating M&A deals, there's often a lot of good information in these files. It's just nice to have right nearby you as you're looking at the data. So again, it's a great way to kind of interact with the data points and keep that level of connection in here. So let's act like this is a new M&A deal. I need to evaluate these 40 wells. Of course, I can just export this data like we did before, but I can also come in and create a WellDatabase project from these. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to call this the Bakken deal. And now project types are pretty straightforward, but you can do these are just ways to kind of pre-configure the sections of your project. So an M&A project kind of gives us a good setup for that. And if you want a description, you can put one in or not. When I hit save, keep in mind it just created my project. So now I have a Bakken deal. And then this next step is actually super important. You can create offset searches when you're creating a project. So when I create an offset search, it's going to say, what does your offset look like? How many miles is your distance? And so 5 is the default, but if you want a tighter 1 mile radius or a 20-mile radius, you can create your own idea of it. And then furthermore, your AOI basis, so the determination of what is 5 miles from what. It could be the envelope of the wells, meaning the extents of the entire well set you have, or it can be the extents of your filter. So in this case, that's pretty relevant because my filter is the shapefile, and then my wells extend well beyond that. So I'm going to go ahead and use my well envelope, and I can name this. I can put a little flag on each of these wells and just call them the active producers. And then we are good to save that. And now we've got a new project. So I'm going to click on this. I can also get there by going to my projects. Projects are a pretty straightforward area, but they're great for a number of things. To kind of get my bearings, I'm going to jump down to the bottom first. This is where I can invite other users to my project. So if I'm working on a team and I might have 3 or 4 people who want to evaluate or see results or understand or share this data with, I can simply add them here by dropping their email address, calling them a viewer, editor, or administrator, and those users will have direct access to my project that I've created. Additionally, the project is set up based off of the template we chose, but I can come in and add new settings like the files or economics setting, and that will change what buttons show up on the left, so very customizable for you. So getting past the collaboration part and kind of working our way down, our home is kind of the details where it just kind of gives us what we named it, the description when we created it, and then an activity stream. So if you add new wells, if wells are updated, if new searches are added, those will all be listed here so you can get a nice pulse on what's happening on this project at any time. Directly beneath that, we've got a message board, which is pretty straightforward, but it's a nice way to be able to come in and say, these wells are great. And then we can post that, and then people can reply and you get your avatar. Anyway, it's a great way to collaborate and really simple messages back and forth. Then the next step we have is the well list. Here is just a listing of every well that we attached to this project, those notes that we added, who added it, and so over time that could vary on who's doing what. But if I click on any one of these wells, it's going to open up and give me that well detail, and that detail is going to give me all of the information about the well. It's going to tell me QM numbers, EUR numbers, the headers, production, directional surveys, you name it, the data's in here. So it's a quick way to access all the information about a well that's you're trying to evaluate here. This is also where I can come in and choose to map these wells, and it drops me right on a map with all of these wells selected only. So that's a nice way of isolating your data set. Moving on from that, we've got the search button. This is where all those offset searches were created. And so what it does is it takes the parameters for the wells that you have added to your project. So for example, of the 40 wells we add, the oldest well came online in 2012. And so to create an offset that is relevant to my data set, it's given me using that 5-mile offset, show me the wells that have started producing by 2012. So it's a great way of making sure your vintage is good, lateral lengths are consistent, TVDs, because we could do it by formation, but let's be honest, and every geologist is going to call it something different, so we stick with TVDs to kind of help some of that. Top 5 operators, permitting activity, completions, and all wells in an AOI. So let's look at one of these, like maybe the first production date. I'll right click and open it in a new tab. And when we do, we'll open up our map. Now we see that our AOI is here with that 5-mile offset that we were talking about. I can still see my shapefile layer behind that. So that's really a nice reference point. And then if I open up my filters, I'll see a first production date filter of 2012. So this is a great way of getting a type curve, say, of what the wells look like in this particular region. And you can start understanding some of the production dynamics there. But to come back to the project again, the searches will actually run every night to let you know what changes have been made. And so maybe for the first production date, not so interesting, but something if you want to keep an eye on activity, these two activity filters as the ones that are permitted and new completions, this will run and tell you how many new wells are permitted in your saved acreage here. So again, this is taking a 5-mile offset and alerting me when new permits come on into that offset, so that if this is maybe a lingering thing that you want to keep an eye on, this will tell you what activity is going on around those assets or that land. Moving down, when we click on the files, we can upload files to a project, and that's a pretty rudimentary use case, but very important to be able to say upload files to a project level. I can create folders, I can download these files, I can attach files to wells. Great way for organizing in a very simple manner. So it's pretty straightforward there. Then we get beneath that, we're in our analytics. So this is the extent of the full WellDatabase analytics that's packed into your project. The thing that you do is you can search using just your project wells or any of those offsets. Furthermore, you could choose an offset as your search and benchmark against your project wells to compare those. It's a great way of saying comparing the top 5 operators versus just my project wells. But within your project wells, there's a number of first pass steps that you can kind of do when this is an M&A activity deal. If I go into my dashboards, I can do a simple thing like go to my production, break this down by operators, which I venture to say will be all one operator. Yep, our current operator, we can see what those look like, but we can also benchmark this against a number of things. What are the well statuses? What are well types? What are the wellbore profiles? I picked a pretty consistent area in the Bakken, so a lot of those won't be super interesting. But if we're doing an evaluation, the other thing you can do is come down into your dashboards. Now, dashboards are pretty flexible, but a number of them are baked in for you. And for this purpose, under economic, you'll notice a few of them, like PDP overview. Now, this is using our backend forecast. So every time production data hits WellDatabase, we go and we create an EUR out of it. We apply a best fit. We actually try to identify volatile production months. We do a few steps to help normalize the production so we get a clean fit. And so what we find is an excellent estimate. It is a well by well level and then aggregated to the total. This is giving me a 30-year number because that's what I selected. But we do have 20 to 50-year numbers already databased. And so, again, for a first pass, I know that I've got 10 million barrels of total cum production for these 40 wells, and my EUR say that there's another 8 million remaining here. For gas, it's a little bit more than that, and then water actually is a pretty good number there, 11 million barrels of water left. And so that's PDP view. You can come down to an EUR summary, which is going to, this one's I got set to a 50-year number, so it is giving me my standard EUR. So this is like for a type well, what my EUR looks like at 571,000 barrels. Average B value of 1.5, which is high-ish, but not out of the realm of normal for the Bakken oil. A 50-year per lateral length number. This is a little arbitrary, but still a number that people like to utilize. And then a time to half months EUR, so 76 months to recover half of my total EUR. All of this is customizable. You click on any of these buttons to edit them. You can clone these. You can add widgets. You can do anything you want. But these ones that are baked in, whenever you're doing an M&A deal, it's really nice to be able to take this first pass, literally just clicking a few buttons, applying that. What did we do? We applied the shapefile as a filter. We added these to a project. We went down to the analytics, and here we are. So if you want to do a first pass and give yourself a 5-minute go, no-go kind of decision, this is an excellent way to make those first steps. Furthermore, if you wanted to look for potential hidden upside, things like coming into your offsets and maybe the top 5 operators, you can swing back over to the production tab. And now we'll get those 5-mile radius comparison of the operators. We can look at their production data, compare these operators, how they work. We can decide to look at, this is a type well on a cum scale. We can flip over to the time data and go to to go back to more of a rate time and a log scale to give us our more standard production look. But again, this is a great way to kind of just take a pass, get acquainted with the area that you're working with, understanding the offsets, and honestly understanding if there's some hidden upside that you're not aware of just by looking at pure PDP or EURs. So great and simple way to kind of dive in and quickly get yourself acquainted with an area. One other area for taking it a step further on an operator comparison, because again, it's finding hidden upside is just such a big key part of evaluating this deal. Our dashboards have an operator comparison that this is using those top 5 operators. It tells me within that 5-mile range, I've got 451 wells, a nice set to compare. Average lateral lengths of 9,200 feet, proppant 13 million pounds of proppant, 12-month oil and gas, average gas oil ratios, and then a box plot of lateral lengths. Looks like we're heavy on the 10,000 foot here, which is not abnormal for the Bakken. You'll see that some of the older Hess stuff kind of some flexibility, a few 15,000 foot laterals. But again, this is nice to know because it makes for a pretty good data set to deal with mostly 10,000 foot laterals. We've got proppant numbers, kind of the spread of what proppant looks like, and from a proppant loading standpoint, we have that as well. You've got oil numbers from that type curve as well as that cum plot. This is actually pretty cool. This is a distribution of B values by operator with a trend line, a polynomial trend line, to show you kind of are they trending up, down, left, right, whatever. Again, you're talking about if I'm evaluating key wells and the offsets are doing something better than perhaps there is hidden upside that my operator can tap into. Again, gas, same thing, oil, the type curves and the B values. So again, another quick way to do this evaluation. You never really had to leave anywhere. Everything's in one place, kind of makes life pretty easy on you. Beneath this, we do have the production data here for all of these wells. And one thing about WellDatabase that's pretty cool is that I can look at here where looks like 40 wells we're producing. I can highlight this region and I can drop a decline in WellDatabase. And so here I can choose my specific parameters, or it will take what I zoomed into, which you can see is 722 to 625, and it'll create a best fit along those parameters with a total 50-year number. When I generate that, we can see the hyperbolic 2.5, pretty high, but again, this is when you're doing a forecast on the aggregate, it can be a little bit challenging. One cool thing I can do here is I can copy this and say that number is fine, but what if we have a 12% terminal number? I can generate that, and now we can compare those items. And so we can see already the difference here. We're going from a 25 million barrel EUR to a 17 million barrel EUR just by going on that modified hyperbolic. Now, again, we're working at an aggregate here. This is absolutely not a substitution whatsoever for a full evaluation, but it is a great way to do a quick pass. Additionally, you can do a similar thing with a type curve. So again, we have 40 wells that produce for a time. Since we've got 34 months of that production, there's really no great reason to not just use those numbers. I will go ahead and hide the gas and water for now, and we'll take let's zoom back in, and we'll take the oil and drop a decline on that. Again, 50 years, best fit, and we see we've got a 417,000 barrel EUR. Again, you might say, well, what about a terminal decline? Let's try it out. We'll drop 12 back on there again because why not? And there you go. It goes to a 381,000 barrel EUR. Again, just really nice ways to making those first passes of understanding what we're looking at. Additionally, always remember every chart in WellDatabase, you can take out an image of that chart. You can download the CSV data behind that chart. And anytime you see any tables in WellDatabase, there will be an export button. The data is no good if you can't take it with you. So, that's the extent of the project that you can do. But imagine if you are dropping that shapefile on, creating this project, doing some high level analysis, and then you say, yes, I want to move forward. You simply come back to the wells, hit map wells, it's going to drop us back on the screen. And then you notice your data source says Bakken wells, and that's super beneficial because now I can go on and apply additional filters if I want to, and they will only apply to the wells in my project. So if I wanted to segregate these out by section, township, range, or whatever, I can do those things relatively easily now. But for what we're trying to do now, we've decided we want to move forward. We're going to go back, hit export. And then we will go ahead and select PHDwin again. Now we are in the Bakken, and so we are going to want to do well level. And this is actually a really important time to point out that leases exist outside of Texas and lease level production reporting. So just because the production is reported at a well level, I can still export this at a lease level, although it wouldn't make a lot of sense because all you're doing is making it less granular than the reported values. So always attempt to be at the reported level, and then if you can't, you can roll up from there. But still, it's important to have an idea about how the regulatory body in question reports this production data. And so you'll find a link on our speaker page where we'll talk about all of the various a blog where we have all of the different reporting agencies and the frequency in which they report production, the level it's reported, and everything. So it really kind of answers all the questions you have for you. So make sure you hop over to our speaker page and look at that if you want to dive into those details. So here I'll choose well level. I will group by reservoir and hit next and call this the Bakken. PHDwin, and then we will hit finish, and of course submit it to that backend, and I can keep working now. This one's going to happen super fast, I all but guarantee it. But again, you can continue working through this. And just as a quick note, all of those charts and everything we were looking at are available here as well. So you can just create that search and start diving through these just as easily. So like the operator comparison, say, it's all right here as well, just for those wells that we're looking at. So again, you can still do this without going through the whole thing of creating a project if you don't want to. But a project is a great collaboration space. So let's go look at our exports. And our Bakken PHDwin just popped up. So let's go ahead and download that. And I will open this. Now let's go ahead and take a second and let me hop over into PHDwin just to show you exactly how this is going to come in. Okay, so I popped over to PHDwin here on a different machine, and I've got a Bakken project already. So let me import these wells. Let me go over and choose, I have it here in my download samples, Bakken. And we will go ahead and leave the defaults. Again, we worked with PHDwin to ensure that this is as complete as possible. And I believe we've had 40 wells in this, considering that we've just grouped by well, we've got 40 cases, nice and easy. So let's just go ahead and take one, look at the general information. We can see everything is filled out from the reservoir, the case name, the monthly production, we'll have it in here. The ID codes, one thing kind of to note, when we are working at a well level here, that you'll have this infinity ID. Now this infinity ID will match over to an identifier in WellDatabase, and you can take this ID and you can use that in that well finder in WellDatabase as well. So if you happen to inherit a PHDwin database that is populated from WellDatabase data, it's super easy to go ahead and grab that data again. You know, that worked with API numbers before as well, so no matter where it's coming from, you are covered. And then, of course, wellbore completions should be in here, as well as any other data that is populated. So again, made it quick and easy to have all the cases we need, and that's a very straightforward but very quick way to get your evaluations rolling. So now let's hop back over to our tool, and I'm going to reset my filters, and we're going to look at a couple of odd edge cases that you should keep in mind. So I think I've got some searches saved here that we can pull up. Of course, you can save any search in WellDatabase. What I have here is a set of wells that's at the New Mexico-Texas border. Now this is a great example of dealing with production that's being reported at different levels from different state regulatory bodies. So in Texas, it's going to be at the lease level, and in New Mexico, it's going to be at the well level. And so for this particular instance, what I suggest to do is create 2 exports, one from each side, so that you can export them to the proper frequency in which the reporting is. So how do you do that in WellDatabase? Well, you come down to the geographic filters, choose states, and we're going to apply Texas as a filter. Add that. And once we do, now we're just looking at the Texas wells. We can come and do an export here by choose, again, PHDwin. You can choose last used and it'll default to whatever you chose before. But for our purposes, I'm in Texas. I'm going to choose lease level. I'm going to group by reservoir. And I'm going to hit next and call this the TX wells. And of course that goes submitting. And then the cool thing, if I come over here, all I need to do is check this box to exclude the Texas wells, and voila, we've got the New Mexico wells. So I'll export these. Kind of just step through this one more time. Oops. And we'll want to do well level and group by reservoir again. So we'll hit next on that. We'll call this NM wells. And we will finish that. And again, both of these will run off in the back end. And so it's a super quick and easy thing to toggle on one of the filters in WellDatabase, and it's worthwhile to do to help ensure that you are getting the cases at the level that you really need them to be. So let's pop over and let's look at these wells. Okay, so I've saved you some time and energy and got those files loaded up. We have 509 total cases here. And so we can see already we're seeing the well exist twice here. We have the reservoir of Clear Fork here. And then if I click on the next, we've got the Wolf Camp. You'll see our ID codes here are going to be our GUID of our well plus the identifier of the formation. So of course, if you continue exporting the data out of WellDatabase, it will absolutely map up just fine. Our monthly production numbers as well as our wellbore completion data should all be populated from all of these cases, to be honest with you. And then as we kind of look down, these are all well level. Let's see if we can't go all the way down to the bottom, probably find some Texas ones. Here we are. So we have Medicine Bow 56111, Texas wellbore API on this one. And let's see, we have Clear Fork as well and Wolf Camp. Under ID codes, you'll see here that your ID is going to be the Texas, so TX, and then the district 08, and then the lease number along with the reservoir code from Texas. So again, just makes it easy to map up, and it's so easy to come in and export these and pull them in at different levels, and so that it makes it where you have all the data is being evaluated at the proper intervals, the proper reporting levels. And so that is definitely how we would suggest handling anytime you're exporting across borders, where one state is handling it at the lease level and the other one is handling it at the well level. So let's take a second and talk about the identifiers, just so you are very clear about how these are set up. So the first option is by the well level, not grouped by reservoir. So kind of just your standard, give me the well production data and you are good. Those identifiers will simply be the Infinity ID for WellDatabase. So again, it'd be very easy to bring those back in. It's very important that we not key off of API numbers. It's just not a consistent key that can be utilized in all instances. So we use this Infinity ID. It gives you a global unique number. It makes it very easy to ensure that you are always getting the right well updated. So when you choose the lease level, things change a little bit. So in Texas specifically, we'll do the state TX abbreviation plus the lease, the district and the lease. And we do that because we know that that has been a standard that other providers have done in the past, and we want to make that simple on you. So if that is how your data is organized today, if you go by lease level, your exports will come come right in, no problem. Now let's go to well level by reservoir. What you will find is that the Infinity ID is there minus the dashes, and the identifier for the formation or reservoir will be appended to the end of it. That again is something that will be consistent every time you take it out of WellDatabase. But again, one other kind of cool feature we added, that if you take that identifier, which obviously is a misformatted GUID type with the extra characters at the end, but if you paste that character string into WellDatabase Well Finder, it will actually bring back the proper well there. So it makes it a little bit easier if you need to go reference that well again. And then the last is the lease level by reservoir. Now that will be similar to the lease identifier you had before, with a pipe in the reservoir ID. So again, that keeps it very consistent from WellDatabase. It makes it very easy to update your data. And then of course, if you have APIs, and creating those searches are nice and easy as well. So the next thing I really want to talk to a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and flip over to a new search just because we want to keep it fresh. We're going to go offshore on this one. So let me grab those offshore API numbers. I'm going to reset my filters again. And I'm going to come back to my well finder. I'm going to drop these in. Now, of course, offshore reports at 12 frequently, but we got these all matched on the 14 digits. So we will use those, apply, and zoom to our region. Now, these are all Talus wells, and I know they are a PHDwin user as well, so this works great. Now, one thing that you have, especially when you have very large databases, is the issue of keeping them up to date, especially if you're moving from providers. It's very complicated. So once you create your mapping and you've gotten your IDs set up in PHDwin properly, then one cool feature in WellDatabase is you can come into the export. And again, this is offshore. Of course, Gulf offshore data is at a well level, and we will group by reservoir because we do database all of the sands and wells are producing from. But if this is a historical data set that you have access to and that you're trying to keep maintained, and you don't necessarily want to go back and overwrite years and years and years of data that you know is good, you can come in here and set your start date. We'll just say 1/1/2025. And we'll leave the end date blank. You can put an end date, of course, if you want, but by leaving the end date blank, it's going to allow me to say use this template again, and I can use it ongoing in the future, and it'll always have the earliest production we'll get will be 1/1/2/25, but new production will continue to append to the end of the file. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next and call this I'm still going to call it GOM, sorry. Maybe I'll get used to Gulf of America one day. And hit finish here. Again, it's going to get submitted off to the back end system, but this takes me back over to my export window where while that's running, I'll show you can download exports that you've run in the past here. Now, of course, by nature, all exports are a snapshot in time. It's the data you had as of that point. And so downloading historical ones is just fine, but what if you want to update the data? Well, right next to this button, we have a run this export again. And what that's going to do is going to take all of your filters, and it's going to reapply those filters, grab the latest data, and regenerate the export with the updated data. So in this case, where I have this massive PHDwin database that I want to keep updated, I've got potentially decades worth of production that I already know is good. I can do this and then come back once a month, hit regenerate, let it run, and when it comes down, I'll get my updated numbers and I'm off to the races. I didn't have to apply filters. I didn't have to do much of anything. I click on my exports, hit refresh, and I am good. And so to kind of wrap things up, we've got the ability in WellDatabase to obviously drop in an API list, a shapefile, search many different ways. It's a few clicks of a button to export out that data to PHDwin and you're off to the races. But should you want to do more evaluations, there are lots of steps in WellDatabase to kind of help you do some first passes on your evaluation, perhaps look at some alternative data sets, some different kind of hidden upside that you might be able to identify. When you are exporting these data, points just to make sure you are always tracking your well level, your lease level, and reservoir reporting. Again, there will be a link in our speaker page to our blog where we'll show you exactly what those are, so you can always reference that and make sure you are always getting the correct cadence of data. And then when you are exporting and maintaining a database moving forward, come back and use that refresh button on the export. Save yourself a ton of time and energy just to constantly go back and knock that out. And they'll give you just that subset of well by using the report dates for your production, your kind of report limits. There's plenty of support documentation on WellDatabase about everything I showed you today. And then furthermore, make sure you utilize the projects. The projects are there so that you can do things like you do these evaluations, even run your PHDwin evaluations, export those data points, create reports, load those into your project, share that with third parties, finance partners, you name it. They'll be able to come in and utilize those. The last thing I really want to talk about is our coupon code. We're going to give anyone who attended PHDwin Week and watched this to the very end, good for you, a coupon code for a whole 3 months use of WellDatabase. Now, WellDatabase is unique in that we offer month-to-month subscriptions for single users, all the way up to enterprise-level subscriptions for major organizations. So we've got something for everybody. So take that coupon code. It's going to be down there on the screen, as well as in some of our documents here we'll share with you. But take that coupon code, get a free month of WellDatabase, and try it out for yourself. I want to say thank you again for joining me today, and another huge thanks to PHDwin team for letting us being a part of PHDwin Week. I hope this gave you a very clear look on how to use WellDatabase and how it can make your workflows faster, easier, just less painful. And so if you're spending time digging through data, just let us help you get back to focusing on the analysis that really matters. And thank you here for attending, and try that promo code. And if there are any questions, I'm going to hang out and answer each and every one of them. Thank you again.